What if your entire world as you knew it was just swept away in a matter of seconds? Riley was just a child vacationing with her family when one of the world's most catastrophic natural disasters in history hit. What happened next is the kind of story that sounds like it's out of a movie, but this was her real life. In today's gripping episode, Riley takes us into the eye of the storm and beyond, and she reveals what survival really looks like. Physically, emotionally, and spiritually. If you think you know what resilience means, think again. Welcome to Steph & Tea, where every week I'm going to introduce you to the people behind jaw-dropping, life-altering, true stories from all over the world. I'm Stephanie Jones, TV host, storyteller, and your partner in crime for the wildest podcast ride you've ever been on. Each episode, you'll hear shocking stories that'll make you realize we humans are capable of anything. Now, let's spill the tea. Riley, I'm going to say, first of all, thank you for sitting down and talking with me today. And if at any point you need to go, because I know that also you're due to give birth, I think, imminently.
No, and
let me know.
No, I literally was before. I was like, "That's not a contraction." I said, and I was like, "Please, Lord, no." But I think we're fine. But I am 1 week from my due date.
Okay. Oh my gosh! And
we're making it happen, Steph. We're doing it.
I love it. Well, thank you for giving me the last week of your freedom before becoming a mother. Chatting with me today, and by the time this podcast comes out, you will have a little bambino there. How exciting!
That's so wild.
It's so crazy, I bet, right? It must be like your life is about to completely get flipped upside down.
No, it's kind of like you can kind of prepare, but you don't. You really just go along for the ride.
Hey, but everyone says that. I'm saying this totally. as a childless lady over here that's got no advice for you. So
no, but you're saying it so confidently. I'm like,
I'm
yes.
giving it with conviction to you, Riley. But I know you're going to be awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
I love it. All right, so let me chat with you before the baby comes, so I can get all your amazing stories out there. I remember that crazy day in 2004 on Boxing Day when there was the tsunami and you were there. Your story is it's inexplainable. I can't even imagine. You were over in Thailand, you're on holiday with your entire family. Talk to me a little bit about the initial trip and why there were so many of you going.
Yeah, 16 of us.
16? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, even more than I thought. Okay, so 16 members. So what caused 16 members of your family to be like, we're all going to Thailand? Because that's a pretty big deal in itself.
No, truly. So my grandfather lived in Thailand. So he lived the dream life. He would live half the year in Thailand and half the year in Italy, because he was quote following the sun. So he loved summertime and avoided winter at all costs. Wow. So he generously covered the holiday for the whole family. So all of us, we fly to Thailand. But my family, my immediate family, so there's 5 of us. I'm the eldest and I have 2 younger sisters. My family, my parents are huge on service work. So we show up at Thailand. It's 2004. I'm 10 years old. And we went and we worked at this orphanage for a few weeks that had rescued children from the sex trade. And then after that, my grandfather had booked this amazing holiday to one of the islands off the coast of Thailand. And so all 16 of us show up, and it's just imagine there are hundreds of islands on the coast of Thailand, and they are beautiful, crystal clear water. There's you can look in the water and you can see the fish everywhere, massive cliffs, the palm trees. So we show up. This is a few days before Christmas. We show up, and I remember just seeing my whole extended family is there. I jump out of the boat because the only way to get there is by boat. And I run up to see my grandfather. I'm so pumped to see him. And then the next few days, we just have the most loveliest holiday. But then the day after Christmas is when everything changed.
Being on this paradise island, like you say, you've just experienced a magical, tropical paradise of a Christmas. What happened on the day of Boxing Day when you woke up? Was there anything unusual when you woke up, or describe what you did or what happened?
Yeah, so early in the morning, I woke up before the sun has even risen. and my whole bed is shaking, and I'm like confused, like what is going on? So I think my sister's like underneath my bed, like pulling a prank on me, and she's like shaking the bed. So I jump off the bed, and like the whole ground is shaking. I don't see my sister anywhere, and I realize like this is an earthquake, and there's things falling off the wall. It was a 9.1 magnitude earthquake, so very strong, a short earthquake. Run down the hallway to my parents' room. I like run in. I'm like, Mom, Dad, like what's going on? And then my mom's like, it's okay, honey. Like it's an earthquake. Don't worry. And I remember the moment she said that, like the whole ground stopped shaking. And we called the reception. And we were like, hey, like what's, is another earthquake coming? What's happening? And they're like, no, you're fine. You're good. Carry on with your day.
So literally you get the all clear, like you're just thinking, okay, this was a crazy earthquake, super random, but everything's fine. We're just going to go about our day as usual now.
Yeah. So we like carry on. I remember going to breakfast. They had like a chocolate fountain at breakfast. So I'm like dipping my like bananas.
Living the dream.
Oh, living the dream. A 10-year-old's dream, like unlimited chocolate, melted chocolate dream. Then we go to this like island called Egg Island, which was essentially like a pile of sand in the middle of the ocean. And which is pretty surreal when you look back on the timing of everything, because nobody on that island survived. And so then we come back from this like little boat trip, and then we're sitting, my sisters and I are like sitting on the beach, like playing, like building sandcastles. And then my dad walks up to us and he's like, hey girls, like my parents are about to go rock climbing. And a crazy like coincidence is that a few days prior when we had arrived, my grandfather had booked this holiday a year in advance, and we had booked like beachfront bungalows. And when we arrived, they had double booked us and said middle of the island, like top floor apartments. And so, which we didn't know how important that would be for us later. And so my dad comes, he picks us, he's like, girls are going to head back. We're about to go rock climbing. And so we start following him back. And this is like the whole area of this island is very small. It's like palm trees everywhere, 2 big cliffs on either side. But to walk from one side of the island to the other takes only a few minutes. So we start walking to the middle of the island where our apartment is.
So good.
And I noticed something so odd is all of a sudden there was just like, because on this island is so much wildlife, like monkeys, wild bird, like wild dogs, like, and all the animals just went silent. Like there was like birds were flying up in the air and flying away from the island. There was monkeys that started climbing up the cliffs. Dogs started howling as if they'd been hurt and running into the forest. And it was just so odd because all of a sudden you hear this like wildlife sound in the background, and then it goes to nothing. And the only thing you can hear is human voices. I just remember noticing that, and I'm like, that's so odd. Like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden I hear my mom in the background shouting, run! And what had happened was we look back through the palm trees to the beach. All the water has left. And it has left so quickly that fish are flying around everywhere. There's boats like on the sand. People who are snorkeling are now stuck on the reef. And my mom had seen the water leave. She'd been at the reception that was on the beachfront. She'd seen this whole thing happening and instantly knew what was happening. And so she starts yelling, run! And so I look back, and there's my mom running towards us. And there behind her in the horizon is like this thin white line. And people are running in different directions. They're like banging into each other. It's chaos. Like no one knows what's going on. And then this thin white line is getting bigger and bigger and bigger by the second. And you then see it's an over 50 feet tsunami. So this huge wall of water is coming at our island at a rapid speed. And so my family, we like run to the other side of the island. And by this point, the wave is so close to us, like probably 300 feet from where we were. And there was this one moment where I saw this man, and he was like on his boat, and the boat just hit him and the boat consumed him. And there was just this moment, and I'm watching this man's life being taken away from him. And as I'm watching it, I'm just thinking, I'm looking up at my dad, who's holding one sister, my mom, who's holding the other sister, and I'm just thinking, we may not make it through today. Like, our lives are hanging on by a thread. And I remember also looking behind me and seeing this mom who was like on a lounge chair, and next to her was a baby crying out, screaming. And this mom's just frozen on her wheel, on the like lounge chair, and can't, like, just is frozen in fear. And I never saw that mom or baby again. And so my family, we just had this moment where it's like, realize like we may not survive. And this, like, this huge tsunami is getting closer and closer to us. The ground beneath us is shaking. People are screaming and shouting. And it's just sights and sounds like no one should ever see. And this is a force of a wave. It just obliterates anything in its path, building, person, anything. And so another crazy coincidence is the day before, my mom and I we'd gone hiking, and we found a pathway up one of the cliffs. And so in that moment, we just see that man, and I look at my mom, and she's like, Riley, we have to find that pathway. And thankfully, where we were on the island was very close to it. So we start sprinting as fast as we can, because our lives were depending on it, up this pathway. And and the ground is shaking beneath us. And I remember there was this one moment, because my dad's holding one sister, my mom's holding the other sister. There's this one moment where I look behind, and I honestly wish I never had, because I just saw the tsunami just all consuming, just destroying everything in its path. And I was looking behind, and I just hear my dad's voice, and he's like, Riley, run. And we start running. I'm like, I have to focus on the voice of my father. And so I start running up this pathway, and it got to this point where the tsunami was like less than a car's distance from us. And I mean, just to think about what happened in order for us to be like, I mean, if we'd made the wrong turn, or if we had, it's crazy to think that's how close we were to death. And so we thankfully, by the grace of God, managed to get high enough up this hill. And we ran to the very top of the cliff, and the tsunami couldn't reach us because we were high enough up there. But I just remember, as this 10-year-old little girl, I just fell down to my knees and just prayed. That was the only response I knew to do. And I felt this peace. I almost felt like someone wrapped a warm blanket around me. I felt this peace in this moment as I'm crying out to God, as death and devastation and destruction is happening all around me. It's this tsunami took 230,000 people's lives, and here I am, this little girl, just crying out to God.
Oh my God! I mean, when you're telling me that, the shivers, the goosebumps that are going up and down my body, I can't even imagine. 10 years old, like you were just mentioning, that woman that was sat on that lounger, the overwhelming power and consuming fear, and the fact that you were able just to focus in on your dad and just follow, just go with everything in you is incredible, Riley. Your name on Instagram is Riley with Courage, and I can completely see why that is so apropos for you, because in that moment, you don't know what you're going to do. And some people do freeze in fright, especially when it's just so overwhelming, like something that is literally out of a horror movie. It's shocking. If you'd have just taken a right turn instead of a left turn, if you hadn't have... And you were saying your grandfather had booked you the hotel on the beach. Thank God he didn't. Or maybe it was God who did put you in those apartments further back. You know what I mean? Or go hiking the day before. All these little tiny nuances that were the things that then saved your life.
Yeah, it's so wild to think about. Like, I always think about like coincidences as small miracles in which God chooses to remain anonymous. Like, it is just so wild to think about how the odds were against us, and yet somehow, in all these little details that lined up perfectly, I'm literally talking to you right now. Like, I'm breathing and I'm talking because of those little moments that in the moment you don't know, like you have no idea, but it's just God, like, in our lives, like planning our path to safety.
How long was it from the initial earthquake to the tsunami? Your mum obviously noticing, right, the ocean is gone, we've got to run. How long was that time frame? And when you felt the earthquake, what time was that?
Yeah, that was like 6 a.m., like early in the morning. The sun is about to rise.
So it's like 6 a.m. you had the earthquake.
Yeah, and then the tsunami was around 11.
During that time, the authorities, I'm guessing, know when you're there, like, yeah, just go about your day. Just, it's fine, don't worry.
We later found out that what had happened is one of the transmission towers, or that helped put out the helped the radio stations in Thailand, had broken. And so there was so people, like the tsunami, when they were coming, unfortunately at that day, a lot of the government wasn't able to communicate to people like, hey, this is coming.
You're with your immediate family, your mother, father, and 2 sisters. And obviously in that moment, you guys are just trying to survive yourselves. But where were the rest of your family during all of this? How did you find them afterwards?
Yeah, so we had no idea where they were. And so we run up to the top of the cliff, and we stayed up there for 6 hours. And we found a hiker's hut. And we found a radio station in a radio in the hiker's hut that was updating people on like, hey, another tsunami is coming. And our island was hit by 3 tsunami waves. The first wave was the biggest, but then there's 2 waves afterwards, which is, I mean, so unfortunate, because if people had somehow survived the first wave, there's like another wave that's coming to hit the island. I remember seeing, like, my mom is like the most confident person I know. I remember noticing like she's so shaken, and then the government was like updating people like, no more tsunamis are coming, you're fine to return to ground level. But we still waited a few more hours. So we start walking down this path, and I hear my mom starts shouting out her sister's name, my cousin's name, my grandfather's name. And when we returned down to ground level, I think that was maybe like the hardest part of the day, because here we are and we just see devastation like no other. Like, it's not just the buildings and everything around us, like the physical structures that got destroyed. It was people. There was bodies. There was people missing limbs. Like, it was horrible. And I remember this one moment, like, I thought I saw someone that was my cousin, and I run up to a body, and I like realized it wasn't my cousin. And so here we are, like, searching among the debris for like family members. And we looked for about an hour, and my parents decided to take us back to our room, which, again, wild, because the beachfront bungalows were absolutely destroyed, but there's our apartment that stays standing. It survived, one of the few buildings on the island that survived. So we go back up to our room, and we fall asleep. And later on in that night, this Thai man runs into our apartment. He like runs up to our front door, starts knocking, and he's like, another tsunami is coming, another tsunami is coming. So my mom is rushing into our room and is like, girls, we need to go, there's another tsunami. And I'm just exhausted. Like, all I want to do is sleep. All I want to do is like be back at my bed in New Zealand. So my family like gathers together, and what happened, it wasn't another tsunami, but because of the tsunami, like the tides of the day were just so like disrupted. And so there was like a very, very quick high tide that was like kind of flooding majority of the island. So people thought, okay, there's another tsunami coming. So we follow this Thai man. He starts guiding us to the other cliff on the other side of the island. And we just follow him, like just trusting this man, who, if you think about it, had just risked his own life. Like, he genuinely thought there was another tsunami coming, and he'd gone down to ground level to see if he could find any survivors. And so here we follow him up to the up this cliff that there is hundreds of survivors, and we walk up, and what comes next was like one of the most special moments of my life as we hear my grandfather and my auntie call out my family's name, and we run over, and every single member of my family had survived.
Can't imagine that moment of seeing their faces and everyone being accounted for when 230,000 people were gone.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just, oh, I mean, I can't imagine that feeling. I can't imagine the relief, the joy, but also the fact that you've all been through something so horrific. What was it like when you first saw them? What was that feeling of, oh my gosh, they're here, that everyone is here?
It was one of the greatest feelings ever. Just like the relief of, it was like the feeling a kid gets on Christmas morning, but like times 1,000. And there's everyone, and you just hug, and it's emotional, and there's tears, and there's just like, how did we all survive? Like we, my family just actually returned back to Thailand just before this previous Christmas, and it was the 20-year anniversary of the tsunami. And we got to talk to some local people who just share stories of like dads who weren't able to like grab their daughter in time, or like little girls that had lost every single family member and now were orphaned. It's just like it doesn't fully make sense. And here we are, and every single member of our family had survived.
It's honestly an absolute miracle and a blessing. Like you were saying, there wasn't just one tsunami. There were 3 that hit that island. And whilst you were up on that grassy verge, you obviously saw the devastation until obviously you heard on the radio, yes, it is safe to now go back down. Whilst you guys were up there on that grassy verge, what were the rest of your family doing? Where were they, and how did they escape?
Yeah, so all of them have pretty different stories, but most of them managed to like find each other in the midst of the chaos of when the water was leaving, and you have those few minutes to run to high ground. And so they like gathered together, and then they ran up the pathway on the other side of the cliff. My cousin though, so this is my favorite story, but my cousin, he's the eldest cousin. I think he was around 18 at the time.
Okay.
What had happened is when they ran up to the top of the cliff, my cousin watched the tsunami hit the island, and then saw the water recede again, and decided to run back down the pathway to see if he could find any survivors. Wow. And he found a little 5-year-old boy who had survived, had somehow clung to a tree and survived the tsunami. And so he goes there, he grabs this little boy and takes him back up the cliff. And what had happened is the parents had just like, it was like, I mean, it's chaos. The mom thought the dad had the son, and they just had totally miscommunicated, ran up the pathway, realizing they had left their son behind. And and then they watch as my cousin is like walking back up the hill with their son.
Wow, what an act of courage. What an incredible young man. Like literally
Seriously.
So selfless.
Most people would not do that. But here's the courage to care.
But you got to think, like, you literally saw that mother on the bench, on the beach chair with their child that didn't even dare move. And here is your cousin, 18 years old, thinking, I've got a few minutes. Who can I save? Literally anybody. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. He's a hero. Absolute hero.
Yeah.
Wow. It's literally... Riley, your family, it is a miracle, but there's a reason. I do believe that God has obviously saved all of you. Absolutely. There's a much bigger plan and purpose here. And like we were saying, in that moment where people either freeze, they run, they flee, they think they've got their child and they don't, you, in that absolute moment of pure horror and fear, you don't know how you're going to act. Obviously, not only was it surviving the wave, it is surviving the aftermath of that too. Like you say, seeing whether it's the bodies, the injuries, the debris, for so many different things, whether it's physical things that people have got, whether it's mental, so much. What was it like in the hours and the days after the tsunami? Because you guys didn't leave. You and your family chose to stay.
Yeah, so the next day, there was a rescue boat that got sent to pick up the survivors, and I mean, almost everybody jumps on the boat and heads back to the mainland to then go jump on a plane and go back to their homeland or back to their families. And I watched as my parents look at me and they tell us like, "Hey, we're staying." Like I assumed for sure we're jumping on that boat, we're going. My parents had decided like that they wanted to stay and help the local Thai people rebuild their lives and help these people who had lost so much, lost their livelihood, lost family members, and like just help practically in any way that they could. And so I watch as my extended family jumps on the boat and we say goodbye to them, which was, I mean, so hard because we just had been reunited with them and now we're saying goodbye to them. And so we stayed on that island. My sisters and I would just stay in our apartment during the day, and my parents would go out every single day and just help the locals in whatever way they could. They're moving debris, and we just waited. But then it got to this point, like I think my parents' plan was to like stay and help for a few days, but days go by and there was not another rescue boat. And so it got to this point and we had very limited like food and water. And so by the end of the week, it was getting to this point where I was like hungry, like really hungry. And we started praying like halfway through that week, like God send us a rescue boat. And then I remember there's a rescue boat arrived 1 week after the tsunami. And there was, it was a charity called World Vision. And there was this one lady, she was wearing like this orange shirt with World Vision on it, and they were like natural disaster relief supporters, and they were going from island to island to help find people like us who needed to be taken back to the mainland. It was like just this moment of like comfort, and then we go with them and they take us back to the airport where we were like about to take our plane back to New Zealand.
Yeah. Were there any moments you come from an incredibly caring and loving family? Your family already were helping child survivors before you went on this vacation. So your family are very, very proactive in putting others first and helping in any way that they can. Was there any moment that 10-year-old Riley was like, what are we doing, when the first rescue boat went, like, we should be leaving? Or did you think, no, we have to stay? What was going through your mind?
Oh, no. I was like, we gotta leave. I'm out. Like,
you're like, get me out of here.
I'm like, I miss my bed and my friends and like normality. Like, take me back there as soon as possible. And like, if it was up to me, I would have not stayed. But looking back, it was just this moment that my parents chose to overcome their fear, go against the voice of fear, and choose to like have the courage, but not just like any type of courage. It wasn't just like physical courage or just moral courage. It was like this radical courage to care for people that they don't even know their names, that like it's not even their country, it's not even their people, but they chose to stay. And it's, I talk about this in my book 3 Seconds of Courage, because it was this decision that changed my life, because it encouraged me to be in those moments where you can choose between like your own comfort versus someone else's need, and to choose to help someone. And like this type of courage that they showed me was not like the absence of fear. It was just this simple like assessment that someone's need is greater, like these people's need is greater, and we can help. Why would we not? But then I'm glad that I also got to see my parents, as days go by, to start praying for a rescue boat. And there's like a point where you can have that type of courage, but then you also need to make sure that courage is also wrapped with wisdom, and it's also wrapped with common sense. And so it got to that point where when days go by and we don't have access to we don't have access to food. It's like my parents are like, okay, we want to have the courage to care, but now it's getting to that tipping point where it's like time for us to choose wisdom too.
Mm-hmm. You're a little kid in the middle of this absolute devastation, surrounded by the people that have lost absolutely everything. How did you even begin to process what had happened to you?
It took years. For me, coming back to New Zealand, here we are, and like school's about to start again and life goes back to normal, but you're not the same kid you were anymore. Like, I remember, even just as an example, the day of Christmas before the tsunami hit, I got given like these red candy cane PJs. And then those were the PJs that I wore that night when we had survived the tsunami, that I ran up the hill when we finally saw the rest of our family members. And I remember thinking, when I put on those PJs for the second time, I'm not the same kid. Like, my whole life changes when you have a near-death experience, when you actually watch people die. And so it took me years to become like the person that I am today, and to learn how to fight fear. I mean, one, practically, there's PTSD, there's nightmares, there's loud sounds, and all of a sudden you get triggered. But two, there was just fear. And one of the ways that my fear showed up after living through a tsunami was I was terrified of the ocean.
Of course.
And understandably so.
Yes.
And so 6 months after the tsunami, my parents, again, make a dramatic life decision as a parents, and they enrolled my sisters and I in beach lifeguard training. And that's because they wanted to teach us, like, hey girls, like, the more that you face your fear, the less power fear has over you. And I remember the first day of training was like one of those moments that like changed my life. I'm so nervous. I just had a nightmare. Like, I can't believe my parents are forcing me to do this. And my dad sees me just distraught, and he gets down on his knees. He looks me in the eyes and he's like, Riley, like, you're fighting a battle between courage and fear, and all you need is a little more courage. And those words have just echoed in my mind ever since, of knowing, like, even to this day, I experience fear. It might not be like the fear of ocean. It might be like fear of rejection, or fear of other people's opinion, or fear of failure. But it's like knowing that there's a constant battle in our everyday lives between courage and fear, and all you need is just a marginal amount of courage over fear, and then courage is gonna win. And so I had that moment with my dad, and then that summer where there were days when fear won, when I would like go in the ocean, freak out, run back to the shore, or days when I refused to go to training. But then eventually I started to increase my ability to be in the ocean and not be so scared anymore. And now to this day, I surf. I've traveled around the world surfing. I love to teach other people how to surf. I love the ocean. The ocean's now the place that refreshes my soul the most. And it's that wouldn't be possible if I didn't do that painful, costly fight between courage and fear. And then, another practical advice was years later, when I was early in my 20s, I did therapy, and that was another huge game changer. Just to have grace on yourself, but face your fears, do the hard work, do the healing, because it's so worth it so that you can live a life of courage.
It's so impressive because it's not an easy thing. You said there's those moments where literally maybe you were frozen in fear and you're I have no desire to see the ocean ever again. Stepping foot on a beach must be whew, deep breath, count to 3, we can do this. Seriously, and it's not irrational, it's very real, and in the most extreme sense of the word for you. So I think, honestly, your bravery and saying, you can pick yourself up, you can do this, you can overcome the thing that's, world-altering. And this was a huge one of the biggest natural disasters that there's ever been. So you are so remarkable and so brave.
Thank you, Steph. That's so sweet. It's you're sure.
It's not sweet, it's honest. I'm telling you. I think you're incredible. And based off all of your story and everything that happened back in 2004 on those islands, there was a movie, The Impossible.
Yeah.
About the tsunami and people there and the things that had happened. Did it hit too close to home? Did you ever watch it? Or if you did, was it cathartic in any way?
Oh, it's I've watched it twice, maybe. It's the hardest thing in the planet for me to watch. And I don't think I'll ever watch it again. Like, I'm like, done. But the hardest part for me to watch that movie is that it's so realistic to my experiences. You know, like a lot of times, like Hollywood can take someone's story and just embellish it or add to it. But the visuals and the sights and the sounds and like the trauma of it all is so accurate to the way that they showed it in the movies. It's very hard to watch, but if people watch that, then they're going to get a better understanding of what it was really like to be, for me, as that like 10-year-old little kid going through that.
Reliving it and rewatching it as an adult, you know, years later. Some people that have survived horrific things say sometimes they feel guilt, like, why did I survive and others didn't? Has that anything, have you ever faced anything like that?
Oh yeah, I've definitely dealt with survivor's guilt, and I've met people who didn't like have that same story, who had lost family members. And so there is just the reality of like, how did this happen to me? And like, why is my story the way that it is? And it just, you kind of have to realize that there's gray areas in our life. There's just some questions we'll never get the answers to. And so that's why I'm so grateful that I have my faith and I have my relationship with God. That's just like been my stronghold my whole life. Because I asked the Lord, I'm like, Lord, why did I survive? And like, why did all my family members survive? And so many other people, that's not their story. And it's just being okay with the question marks in our lives and knowing that some questions will never get answered. And I'm not going to get all the answers until maybe one day I'm in heaven. But like, for now, I have to choose how to live in the gray and choose to like not let this overcome me and not dwell on it and not sit on it. It's just, there's sometimes in life where you have to choose to like process those feelings and process them with safe people. Because me sitting in survivor's guilt and letting that predict and like change my actions and the way that I live life is not worth it. It's like, it's too costly. I'm not going to live into my calling and my purpose and the things that like I'm here on earth to do if I just dwell in it. And so I've just had to have moments where some moments I need that grace upon myself. And then some moments I need to be like, all right, bounce. Like, let's not sit and dwell in this one.
I absolutely love that. And I think, you know, you have survived for a reason. You are here for such a strong message, and to be able to tell this story, to say that you can overcome and deal with anything. And that in itself is an incredible message, Riley. You've been very open and honest about your faith and your relationship with God, whether it was praying up on that grassy verge or whether it's now you're talking about, you know, one day when I go to heaven, which is beautiful. Tell me, do you come from a religious family? Is it something that since the incident has increased, you've believed in God even more and it's become more strong and your relationship's got even deeper?
That's a great question. Yeah, so I grew up with a family that both my parents were Christians and they loved the Lord. And they always just, I could just tell that their relationship with God was so authentic and genuine, and they made it seem so like fun and not like, and it for them, like it was, if I didn't want to go to church on a Sunday, it's like not a big deal. But it's about like spending time with God each day. And, you know, for me, that looks like when I wake up in the morning, I like will go and read my Bible and write in my journal and just like spend time with God before I look at my phone. And so I had like given my life to Jesus when I was 5 years old, and I had actually I'd done it I'd kept like saying the prayer and giving my life to Jesus for 4 Sundays in a row. And the pastor like tells my mom, is like, your daughter keeps like running to the front and is like, I commit to you, Jesus. And my mom is like, Riley, like, why do you keep like doing this? You only need to do it once. And I'd turn to her as a 5-year-old little girl and I tell her, because I want Jesus to know I'm serious. And so like before the tsunami, there was such an understanding like that there is someone greater, and it's God, and there is like, and that Jesus, like he had died for me, and like that I have this relationship with him. But then after the tsunami, here I am on my knees shouting out to God in the middle of this like horrible situation. And so I just knew that he was the safest place. He was my refuge. It did increase even more after the tsunami. It's just like my reliance on my relationship with God and on Jesus to like be the thing that carries me through. And my faith was just core to so many decisions that I made. And it helped me so much as I healed.
Absolutely. What would you say to people that say, well, if there was a God, there wouldn't be a tsunami in the first place? You know, how do you deal with people who challenge your faith, possibly?
Yeah, I mean, you go back to the reality of like there's just questions. There's sometimes things that we can't answer, but two, I think about like light and darkness. Like we cannot actually understand light without darkness. And if there is a God and if there's like someone that created this world, then there's most likely something that opposes it. It's like magnets or like it like there's two opposing things in the world. And so there is like evil and there's evil things that happen in this world. And I know that from my experience, like God is close to the brokenhearted. And I know that he would never have wished that upon me. But then at the same time, like he also helped me grow through it. And like, I would not be who I was without it. And so like, I wish upon nobody to ever experience what I experienced, but I also know that I am who I am today. I'm as like driven and grateful and joyful because of that experience. I wouldn't know how to fully answer that, to be honest, but I just know that I would encourage people like keep asking those questions. Like I really do believe that doubt leads to greater faith. And so like if we had that doubt, like is a God, how can he let this happen? Then like keep questioning it, keep going, like go to a church, ask like the pastor these questions, let that doubt guide you to greater faith.
I really do believe that your strength and faith is what got you through this horrific ordeal, and it's how it shaped you to the person that you are today, and that's what's giving you this purpose in life to be able to share your story with others.
You've said it spot on. Like it was my faith that carried me through something so hard.
I think it's testament to you and your faith that you've become this incredible woman that you are, with such a strong message that will enrich and help the lives of others and make them feel like whatever hurdles or obstacles in their life that they can overcome by listening to stories like yours, Riley.
Thank you, Stephanie.
So finding purpose after a huge ordeal like you did cannot be easy. So at what point were you like, okay, this is my story and I need to share it with the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. So something that as I boarded the plane and we headed back to New Zealand that I reflected on was the reality that we all need each other. And here I was, this 10-year-old little girl. And it was getting to the point of desperation by the time World Vision came to like pick us up in the rescue boat. It was getting to the point of hunger and even to the point of starvation, and realizing like we need each other, and there's times when you don't have all that it takes to like carry yourself through, that you need another human. And so I share that because as I'm on the plane flying back to New Zealand, I realized that I wanted to set my life towards helping others. I really wanted it to be this sort of message that encouraged other people, that the reason why fight the battle between courage and fear is because the impact you can have on other people. And so I've like used my story and realized in my story, if my parents hadn't made those decisions, if World Vision hadn't come to rescue us, like all these reliances that I had on other people, I could be that for other people too. But even more so, I could encourage people to like face their fears, to live a life of courage because of others, because of the way that we get to love others. And like, I know this is a very random analogy, but like, I grew up on a farm in New Zealand, and we had deer, and we put this like group of deer in this fence, in this paddock, in this like field with a 3-foot fence. And the deer never jumped over the fence, but they had no idea that they could jump 6 feet or even higher. And so like but if they just saw one deer jump with the fence, they'd be like, oh, I can do that. And and so like we have like the responsibility to jump the fences in life, to like face and do the hard things, to like overcome our fears because of the people behind us, because of the people watching us, because of our friends, because of our family members, because we can show other people it's possible to jump this fence.
I love that. And I think when people read your book, 3 Seconds of Courage, that message of you can do it, you can achieve it, what you set your mind to, you can do. But what made you think, right, the time is now? Now is the time to release this?
Well, that's such a good question. No one's ever asked me that question before. So I started writing this book during COVID, and I would get up every morning at 5 a.m. and just started writing it. And I had a pretty big job at the time, but I was like so committed to writing this book. And I think what had happened is I just kept, as I travel and I speak, I just kept meeting people and especially like young women. And I was like, man, it was like during COVID, and there was so much fear. And just people were going through, it was a hard season for so many people. And I just remember being like, oh man, like I wish I could just like give them a practical guide so that they could realize like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like they are struggling with anxiety or depression or fear or whatever way that that's coming up in their lives, but there is a pathway forward. And I know that pathway, and I also know the potholes in the pathway, and I don't want them to fall down them. And so I started writing this book because of these young, incredible women that I was meeting. And I was like, there's so much I want to teach you. And I like, from my own story, and there's so much I want you to avoid of the failures that I made in my own story. We had then pitched this book, 3 Seconds of Courage, and then publishing houses started fighting over it. And I was like, oh, okay. So like this was the book that was meant to come out right now. And then like now this book has only been out in the world for a short period of time, but already have been like receiving messages from young girls that are like, thank you for writing this. They're like living courageously because of this book. And I'm like, I would have never known, but there was such a need. And so it's like we all have the ability within us to respond to the needs around us.
Writing about trauma is never easy because you're obviously having to relive it, and putting pen to paper. Like I'm sure you're like writing and feeling those emotions. It's a very difficult thing to do. What was the hardest part of reliving your story when you were writing it? And was there a moment where you thought, oh my gosh, I can't even write this?
Yeah, it was because like a book is a little different than when I go and I travel and I speak and share this story, because a book requires even more details and even more time. Like you spend hours editing the same chapter over and over again. And so, you want someone to read a book, and my book is very like memoir based. It shares so many stories from my childhood, but starts with this tsunami story. And so like you want people to read it and like visualize it, and they like know where that tree is, and they know where I am on the island. And so it was really difficult to write this story and be in the moment. It's emotional, and that as I'm writing it, I'm having moments where I'm having flashbacks. And so before I even started writing it, was like, okay, what do I need so that I can do this well? And one of the things I am glad that I have in my life is mentors. So I like called out to these like great leaders in my life, and I was like, I'm about to do this, I need your help. And then 2, relying on people. Like there's there's this theory about post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress. And it's this understanding that people can live through the same experience, but some people are so overcome by it, and then some people grow out of it. Like they grow beyond it and they grow through it. They did this study over many years, but one of the things that they found is, do you have one person in your life that will not belittle your experience, that will be there and listen to you and like champion you? And I call these people, like in my book, 3 Seconds of Courage cheerleaders. And so I had to find my courage cheerleaders. Yes, I had my mentors, but then also like it was my husband. It was like one of my friends, Christy, like these people that I could go up to and be like, this was so hard. Or just like sometimes it felt like I just, when you're with a girlfriend, you have like a good vent session. Like it just felt kind of like there were times when I had to just take the trash out of my mind. There was like so much going on and I just had to just express it to a friend. And then that friend is just like, we're sitting there over a glass of wine and like, she's just like, you've got this. Like, thank you for sharing it with me. And so just like all those, like those are just 2 examples, but just having things that really did help me so that I could do this well.
You mentioned your husband, Jack. Guys sound like such a great team together, and I love how supportive he is of you, and the fact that you call him you're like a courage cheerleader, which I think is so cool. As we mentioned earlier when we first started, a baby's coming any day. Do we know if it's a boy or a girl?
It's a girl.
Oh my gosh, congratulations, Riley.
Thank you.
So nice. Have you got a name picked or is it top secret?
No, we don't. My husband and I drove to our doctor's appointment this morning and we were going through our list of names. We have like 4 or 5 names that we like, but we just decided we want to meet her because I feel like once I meet her, then I'm going to know. I'm going to be like, you are this name.
So some people obviously have a name that they're very like gung-ho on, they're like, this is it. But I feel like you have to see the baby to really feel like, oh no, you really look like a, I don't know, whatever the name may be. Yeah, because you can tell the personality a little bit and what they look like.
I'm like, is she going to look like a little like strong, free-spirited baby, or is she going to be like soft and sweet? Because those 2 different names, like,
absolutely,
they're not going to match.
100%. What's one thing that you cannot wait to pass down to your child? Because it sounds as though your mum and dad have instilled and passed down so much to you. So what are you hoping to pass down to her?
Oh, that's such a good question. I would say the first thing is faith. Like, I just hope she finds God as her safe place. But the second thing, as much on brand as this is courage. Like, may she just know how to face her fears. May she live a life that's focused on others. May she like be known as like a courageous person. Like I want her just to be this little sweet blessing wherever she goes. And in order to do that, she needs courage. So I hope she lives a life where she's not so bound by the opinions of others and what she thinks others might think of her, that she just goes out and just loves people radically.
I've got to say, I'm sure you will be leading by example, and if anyone can instill that in a little girl, it's definitely you.
Thank you, Steph.
So looking back when you were just that little girl, that 10-year-old little Riley, making all those decisions and living everything out, what would you wish you could go back and tell her now?
I would tell her that it's okay to be sad. Because I assumed, like, I was known before the tsunami as like a joyful person, and joy is still very much my strength. But I think afterwards, my dad was a CEO of a company and my mom was a pastor at one of the biggest churches in New Zealand. And so I felt like I lived a very like public life. And we now are known as like the family in New Zealand that survived the tsunami. And there's like news channels and press that wants to hear our story. And you go to church and the old grandma like wants to hear the story. And I remember thinking like, I have to tell it joyfully. Like I have to like put on joy. And I didn't know that like I think about the movie Inside Out, the first movie, and it's sadness that's the hero. Like sadness wins. And so like sometimes in our lives, like it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to have moments where like in order to get to that joy and in order for joy to feel deep, we have to like have moments where we experience our sadness, but I would just do anything to avoid my sadness. I would not let myself feel grief or sadness at all, and I would deny it. But like, we have to reveal things in order for them to heal. And we have to name our emotions, because otherwise misplaced emotions can come up in our lives in some really unhealthy ways. And so we have to like name them and reveal them. And I wish I would just tell her, like, you can name and you can reveal sadness, and you are still lovable even when you are sad.
Would that be your advice, do you think, to people that are experiencing, whether it's sadness or they're feeling stuck or trapped now? Would that be your advice now?
Yeah, I would. I remember there was this moment when my husband and I were dating, and I had just finished a therapy session, and he was FaceTiming me, and here I am in my track pants, like puffy face, so red-eyed. I'd just been crying the whole time in my therapy session, and I remember thinking I don't want to answer, but I felt like this little nudge in my heart to answer the phone call. And we were like pretty new, like maybe a month in. And so, you're trying to like impress the cute guy, and, you don't really want him to see you like the way you are right now. But I'm so glad I answered. And he just kept, I answered the phone call, and then I just start crying. And he just kept saying, like, you're so strong, you're so strong. And then later on that day, he called me back again. And he's like, Riley, you are so beautiful when you're broken. Like, you are such a joy to like be there. You are not a burden. Like, even in your brokenness, even in your sadness, it's an honor to be there for you. And I would say that to people, like, there are people that are listening to this, you and watching this, like, you are beautiful when you are broken. Like, people would be honored and find it as a joy and count it as an honor to be there when you're going through these hard moments. Because if you let people in when you're going through that worst day ever, then how much more are they going to appreciate your best day ever? Like, you want to let them in those moments that are difficult and hard, because then they're with you to feel fully experience and appreciate the sweetness of your victory.
I think that is so beautiful. Such a beautiful message, and so incredibly sweet. And you're so right. It just allows people in so that they can enjoy the good times even more.
Exactly.
Oh, Riley, you're absolutely gorgeous, inside and out. Absolutely lovely. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for your little girl imminently coming. I'm incredibly excited for your book, 3 Seconds of Courage. Please tell everyone, like, where can they find it? Where can they get their hands on it? Where can they listen to your podcast with your husband? How can people follow along with the rest of your journey?
So my book, 3 Seconds of Courage, is available everywhere, even to all our British listeners out there. It's on Amazon UK. But the book, anywhere you find your usual books, it's going to be there. There's also an audiobook that I recorded myself. So if you want to hear more of my voice, you could go buy that and listen to it. And then our podcast is on Apple and Spotify. It's under Cold for More. And then my platform is just Riley with Courage on Instagram and TikTok. And then even if people are listening to this right now and they like need a little courage cheerleader or a pep talk, you're more than welcome to email me. It's rileywithcourage@gmail.com.
You are literally the sweetest ever. Riley, it's been absolutely delightful talking to you. Thank you so much for giving me a bit of your time. Literally, as you're about to give birth.
Any day now. I'm a week away. I'm like, okay, let's go.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. I can't wait for you. It's going to be so incredible. And may your next chapter be even better and more beautiful than you ever could have imagined. You deserve it. You really do. And I'm sure she's going to, she's so lucky to have a mum like you.
Oh, thank you.
It's one thing to survive the unthinkable, but it's another to revisit it, speak it out loud, and offer it to others as a lifeline. Riley's words remind us all how fragile life is and how powerful it can be when we refuse to let trauma define us. If you loved Riley's story, give it a like, share it with your besties, and I'll be back next week for more Steph and Tea.